And it's Tuesday. That means our political insiders join us. Tony May, our Democratic strategist, Charlie Giroux on the Republican side. And gentlemen, all the focus today has been on Vatican City and the conclave of cardinals finally beginning. The first vote, obviously not a decision and not really one expected in a case like this. Can you guys put this in a political perspective in any way as to them electing a pope?
You take us from politics to religion and then back.
And then back again. That's my job.
Well, I think you have to view this from the macro level, which is that for 455 years, only an Italian had been elected pope prior to John Paul the Great being elected to the throne of St. Peter. So you have to believe that the Italians have the inside track, namely Cardinal Scola from Milan. But he is an interesting study because he's not part of the Curia, which is the kind of the big divide within the College of Cardinals right now. I think the big question, and Tony can answer this one, is whether an American has a shot at it, because there are 4 Westerners being mentioned as being in line for the papacy.
Yeah, Cardinal Dolan and Cardinal O'Malley from Boston, Dolan from New York City. I think not. I think there's just too much doubt, generally speaking, but also the cardinals will be very sensitive to the doubts that there might be another shoe dropped in terms of a sex scandal affecting the United States prelates. So I don't think we'll see one from the United States. Charlie, you'll be pleased to know I believe the next pope will come from Brazil, the largest Catholic country in the world.
There's been talk of that. There's also been talk of trying to elect a pope who's from a country that has Islamic roots. And again, bringing more.
And the Nigerian cardinal is clearly in that mix. I agree with Tony. Kind of the outsider, if you're going to look at a Western Hemisphere prelate, would either be the cardinal from Canada, Oyet, or the cardinal from Sao Paulo, Scherer. Interestingly, a German Brazilian. He would be the 2nd consecutive German elected to the throne of St. Peter.
And a conservative, religiously speaking.
And part of the Curia, which would make some of the Italian cardinals happy.
All right, you can always depend on CBS 21 News to stay on top of this. As soon as we know anything more, we'll pass it to you on CBS21.com or right here on the air. Gentlemen, let's just fit in the Kathleen Kane thing real quick if we can. We're running out of time, but she's been opposed to the state voter ID law, and now actually, Tony, you were asking this question earlier throughout the day. I mean, will she defend it in court? Will she have to, and should she?
Well, I mean, it's a quandary for her because under the Commonwealth Attorneys Act, she's supposed to do this function, but I think she's going to come down on the side of conscience and saying, I cannot, in good conscience, defend this law, which I have spoken out against previously. So we'll either ask the general counsel for the governor to do this, or we'll appoint a special counsel.
What do you think, Charlie?
Well, a special counsel costs the taxpayers more money, so that's an interesting conundrum. But, I mean, here is kind of a good test of her advocacy skills, because she's supposed to, as Tony correctly pointed out, under the law, do this. A good lawyer can advocate for a position even though he or she may not ultimately agree with it. Let's see what happens.
It would have a long-term political effect, though, or it could.
It certainly could.
If she doesn't win, it'll hurt.
I agree, by the way, with Tony that ultimately she'll punt on this.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the $100,000 club. Penn Live, Patriot News broke this. A lot of state officials making more than 6 figures. Is there anything wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with it. It's interesting that a significant number of state employees make dramatically more than the governor. The question that a lot of folks ask...
That was the interesting fact I found out of the whole thing.
The governor found that interesting, too.
I'm sure he did.
I mean, I think that 500 out of 80,000 employees making over 100,000 should not be a shock. What I think also is that what we need to look at is what they do for their money. A large percentage of those making over 100,000 are doctors in the health and welfare system. They have a lot
of experience.
And they could make that or much more in the private sector. And then college professors or college presidents. And you have to ask, you know, what preparation goes into becoming the head of a department or a dean or something like that.
All right, gentlemen. I'm glad we got all those points in. I'm all out of time. You can catch our Political Insiders every Tuesday right here, as you know, on CBS 21 News at 5:30.